Welcome to Become the Leader, the show that equips you to rise higher, lead stronger, and become the leader you would follow. Hey guys, Jody Holland here with the Become the Leader podcast, and we've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about personality, but first, I'm Jody.
Maleah Grigsby.
I'm Mike Grigsby.
And I'm Meghan Slaughter.
And we're going to be talking about specifically the way that people develop temperament and what that means from a workplace standpoint. I have been a huge fan of Profiles International for a long time. They're a company that's owned by Wiley Publishing. They also own the site Everything Disc. So huge history in personality and behavioral testing. But if you go all the way back to 1928 to William Moulton Marston, who wrote the book, The Emotions of Normal People. I'm not really sure what those emotions are, but apparently normal people will have those. He started mapping out exactly what it was like to really take a look at people and go, oh, so this is what it means to look at this from this angle or that angle. You can go much further back and get the four temperaments of mankind, or even back to Aristotle and look at the way that he was defining people. But from the very beginning, we've wanted to understand people and we've wanted to understand what makes people tick. So originally, Marston described them as dominance, inducement, which we now call influence, steadiness, and compliance, which sometimes is cautiousness or conscientiousness. But he never created a test. Fast forward to the 1950s, and a guy named Dr. Walter Clark said, let me take Marston's research and let me turn it into something worthwhile. So he turned it into the DISC assessment. It was really kind of the first of its kind to measure the temperament of people specifically designed for work. Then Profiles International gets a hold of it some 40 years later, and they go, let's redo the research. And they tested initially over 650 people, and they researched all the different content out there on DISC and on other temperament profiles, as well as going a little bit deeper and trying to evaluate how intense a person will present themselves based on their personality makeup and based on their workplace setting. So they created a fifth scale called motivational intensity. And you put all of this together, and they came back with this amazing tool. Then, two or three more times, I think it was three more times, going through about 2011, they redid the assessment. As of 2011, they had some 150,000 business people of all different backgrounds, different age groups, different genders, different educational makeups that had all taken this assessment, and they revalidated it again. This is an amazing tool. Now, as we get started on this, I want to just get your feel. Like when you went through this, how did you feel about the report? And let's start with Maleah. How'd you feel about that report? Or no, let's start with Meghan. I did that wrong. When you first read your individual report and then you looked at your overall profile makeup.
I think when I first saw it, I kind of thought, there's no way, that's not me. And I was in denial about a little bit of it, but I realized, so with the scales, it's a number scale, but the scale is not good to bad. The scale is how intense you present in that area. And so once I kind of understood that and read the meaning behind each of the scales, I started realizing, okay, that sounds exactly like me. Like, okay, I'm guilty of that. So I do think that it's really accurate. At first, I didn't necessarily want to admit to all of that,
So what did you
but
not like? What's the part you didn't want to admit to?
well, for one, my motivational intensity is on the lower end. So I was thinking at first that meant that I had no motivation, which is not the case. It's just that I am not as dominant in how I present that. And I really like to think through things. And, I didn't need a test to tell me this, but I have been accused of being a perfectionist a time or two. And the test did also reaffirm that for me.
So what was your scale four score, which would be where scale three and scale four would have a lot of detail orientation in there.
I was a 66 on scale 4, so that's being focused, careful, and thorough. And then my scale 3, which is sincerity, understanding, and stability, was a 73. So
So
I
pretty
kind of,
intense on both of those.
yes, my motivational intensity was down to a 36. So Again, that doesn't mean that I'm not motivated. It's just that I don't present it as intensely as some people would.
Yeah. So like, let's say you're would you say 70 what on scale three?
I'm a 73.
So if you're a 73 on scale three and then say a 65 on motivational intensity, what that represents is you would more consistently and more assertively follow your personality makeup. So it means it also means it's harder for you to adapt when you have a high score and easier for you to adapt your personality to different settings when you have a lower score. So kind of interesting. Now, how did you feel, Maleah, when you took the personality test?
I was like, this is so wrong. I even texted my dad. I was like, I don't think I answered it right. Like, this is totally wrong. Like, did I lie? I don't think I did. I think my immediate defensiveness came from more of like how it's a way deeper issue of like how I want others to view me. And I need like all of these I'm big on doing personality tests. And so I'm really big on like those have to reaffirm how I want to be viewed by other people. And so for a test to directly defy how I want to be viewed, like I'm doing something wrong.
So Mike, hit that really quick because you and I talked about that, about how you want to be viewed versus what's at your
Yeah.
core.
Well, Jody, you and I have done assessments for the better part of 20, was it gosh, now
Almost 30
25,
years. Yeah.
20, almost 30 years now, man. And profiles was the first one that I ever took. And you and I actually got to work with the founders of profiles, Jim Serbasky and Bud Haney. And, it's been fantastic being in that world and seeing it. So not only did we get to do that, but then we got to lead so many companies going through that and how they're looking at their own teams, et cetera. So we have extensive experience in this. And what I have learned, and I didn't know this up front, but after I think what you say, 150,000 people have taken this, right?
Yeah.
After you've seen a really, really large sample set and leading teams through this, what I began to realize is that there are the natural, what we'll call the inherent tendencies. This is who you are at rest. We'll put that into air quotes.
Yeah.
And then there's learned behaviors, right? And like Megan and Maleah have both said, when I first took the test, I'm like, I'm going to call BS on this one because that's not me at all, right? But what I didn't realize is that it absolutely was me, but without having the input or feedback from the assessment, I had already and kind of naturally gravitated toward learned behaviors. This is the way that I make my world work, right? I'm making numbers up here, but because I'm low on scale five or because I'm high on scale three, I figured that out and I have to show up this way in at work or in the world or whatever else. So there's a really big difference because invariably, and Jody, I know you've done this, and Megan, I think you're starting to see this too. When you start to show these reports back to people, they're like, "That's not me," and you have that argument, and you gotta kind of disarm them first. Being able to explain, yes, it's you who you are at rest, but when you show up to work, you learn how to do these behaviors to fit in and to make things go well.
And I noticed also, and I want to get the rest of yours in just a second, Maleah, but I noticed also that when I've done a 360 evaluation and the PPI, so we have checkpoint 360 and the PPI, what the PPI does says this is your natural tendencies. This is what you're likely to project yourself as into the world. So we may want to be seen in a certain way, but we don't always realize our behavior patterns are demonstrating something different. Then you do a 360, and that's people evaluating the individual. So you evaluate yourself, and then everybody around you, boss, peers, direct
Yeah.
reports, and others. And what I have found is every single time on the checkpoint 360, they will describe the behavioral tendencies that the people looked at their first report and go, I thought that's not me. So that becomes a lack of
Almost
awareness.
one for one. Yeah.
They validate each other to say that from the outside, people are seeing this. I need you to see it from the inside so you can learn behaviors instead of just projecting them. So, what else were you going to say about your report there, Maleah?
I think that what you guys are talking about is exactly what I took away from it is more of understanding if that kind of is the at rest behaviors. I know how I want to be viewed and how I want to show up. And so it's little tweaks of here and there that I know I need to make adjustments to be able to present at my best self.
So, I want to kind of Mike, you've said you've taken this a dozen times now, probably.
or more.
You and I keep retaking it every couple of years
No, I
just to see
know.
if we've changed. And so
No,
far,
no,
I have not.
not even close.
Since I went into business,
Yeah.
like you and I, you and I knew each other before I went into business because
Yep.
of our relationship with you building me a great website for the consulting firm I was with. But I am still high on scale one, which is direct, forceful, and action oriented. And I am still high on scale two, enthusiasm, persuasiveness, and optimism. Scale three could have been left out for me. Sincerity, understanding, the one my wife wishes I had, stability. None of
Yeah.
that's there. And then scale four, I'm low, but not non existent. It's focused, careful, and thorough. And then my motivational intensity, I'm curious on this one, like how aggressively you present your personality. So, what was your score on that one, Mike?
On the MI,
Yeah, on the MI.
yeah, I'm right in the middle. So
Sure.
it's a 54. And that's the thing that bothers me so much is like I want to be more intense on things, and I score right across the
You're
middle every
steady
single
Eddie.
time that I've done this. And
Um,
it's it's really interesting, and for anyone listening to this, having taken it, I bet you I've taken it 20 plus times, right? And outside of just outright lying on it, right? It pegs me that pegs me the same every single time, and I've done that over the course of 30 years. So it's really important. I say that just for the to kind of support the validation. But the other part is after 30 years and 20 plus tries, you got to go, okay, this is me.
yeah.
And what's important, I talked about, it really pegs you who you are, kind of your inherent, your at rest state. I think it's really important. And Al Rinaldi used this illustration way back when he was executive vice president for Profiles back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But he talked about anybody can hold a stretch on the proverbial rubber band. You can go in Monday through Friday, and you can hold this stretch on a rubber band, but you can only hold that stretch for so long. And eventually the quote unquote snap is back to whatever you're resting, who you are at rest. And that shows up typically when we hire somebody, those first 90 days, they are holding a stretch because they're putting their best foot forward. They're showing up how they want to, and they're holding that stretch. And then about 90 days in, and Jody, you and Megan can speak to this, right? They turn into, it's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like, who are you? Where's the person that I hired? And if you don't realize that stretch and kind of resting state, you really begin to um, misapproach. I guess that's you don't orient yourself around that individual the right way.
Yeah. Hey, think about that. And Megan, you've worked in a few environments. I'm sure you have as well, Maleah, and I know Mike and I have. Sometimes the organization doesn't tell you the truth about their environment. And so you are stretching to fit into something that you didn't think you were getting into.
Right.
Like, how hard is that? And I want to get Megan's take on this because I know you've worked for good bosses and bad bosses.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting as an employee because we've talked about psychological safety and the psychological contract in the past. So organizations have an expectation of the employee and how they're going to perform, but it goes both ways. The employee has an expectation for the organization and what it's
Mhm.
going to be like.
For sure.
And so when they step into a culture that's nothing like what they thought it would be, then they have this conflict of identity because they're trying to become something that they're not. And whether that's a shift in values or just everyday behaviors, eventually it starts to wear down on you and you just can't do it after a while. You're going to have this clash. You're going to have to confront how you're feeling or, what it's like to interact with your coworkers or your boss. And sometimes that can be a simple conversation, going to your managers or your coworkers and saying, hey, this is kind of what I thought the organization was about. I'm noticing some different trends. Can we just get on the same page about what the mission is, what the values are, what we're trying to accomplish here? And if you can have that conversation and establish it, then everybody can kind of get back on track and you can start getting closer to your identity. But if the track is on this side and your identity is way over here,
Mhm.
then eventually you're just going to start drifting off
Yeah.
and
And
they'll
that,
come
that
back.
rubber band at some point is going to go and
Yeah.
snap back.
Megan, I want to just capitalize on something that you said because I think it's really pivotal to for people to understand, and anyone listening to us that is a hiring manager or boss or business owner, you've got to hear this part. You talked about conflict identity or identity conflict, and that is so. I think that's an imperative point to bring because it's not just the organization having expectations of how the employee is going to show up. The employee has expectations of how the business, the company is going to show up, and if you get into this kind of finger pointing going back and forth, it doesn't work. I want to give a quick example. So I did some work over the last 3 years with an organization that was trying to grow. They were a small company, only had 8 people in the office, but they were trying to grow. And the CEO had enough wherewithal to say, I know that my culture is impacting where I'm going. It's working against where I'm trying to go. So over the last 3 years, what we did was we worked on that culture. And what was so interesting was as the culture became the goal, so everybody oriented around the culture. It wasn't the boss's idea. It wasn't so and so's idea. It didn't belong to this one department. It was a shared entity that everybody took care of. People self-selected out of the organization. They're like, that is not what I signed up for, and they self-selected out. Other people.
Can you guys hear me? I am locked up on this end.
Employment as well. Oh, there it goes.
Okay, I'm back. So the sentence that it cut off on when my internet went down is other people, and then it went blank. You were saying, Mike?
I don't know what other people were saying. You're gonna have to edit this one. Um,
Probably so, yeah.
And the
but
recording continued after you left, so it should still be on here for us.
I hope so. I hope so.
yeah,
We'll find out. So
so
anyway, back into it.
Malia, you were starting to say.
I was going to say, I was taught this from the standpoint of dating, but I think it's totally applicable during employment as well. As if you're a candidate stepping into or thinking about joining a new team, thinking about whatever red flags or beige flags you see in the beginning are only going to grow. So if you are seemingly parallel tracks, but you are 1 degree off, the further along you go, the further apart you're going to get. So being aware before and in the interview process, the interview is just as much for the candidate as it is for the employment. Understanding what are these beige or red flags that I'm starting to see. Is this only going to grow? Is this going to be something at its largest scale that I can live with, or is this going to be my breaking point?
That's a very good point. And I agree with you. It just gets worse. It doesn't get better over time. And I think that's the mistake people make is, oh, people will change. I think people can change, but people don't very often. And that's the thing to watch out for.
Well, it's not even. I think we use assessments, and I say we collectively. I think overall, the majority of people using assessments, I think they use them in not the right way, or they're certainly not getting them the maximum mileage out of them. One of the things that they tend to do is to say this is an absolute do hire, absolute don't hire. I think it's more about kind of eyes wide open, right? If you hire, this is what you're going to get. If you don't hire, this is what you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
And being able to go in with that understanding of, you know, this is kind of our baseline, but we know we're going to have to orient around this individual this way, and so on. So I think they're not using it to the best that they should be or could be.
Yeah. And I think from a team standpoint, the go back to what you were saying, Malia, is trying to find the red flags before you get in there. Wouldn't you only want to hire people that fit within your team? Like, even if you need somebody, you really, really need somebody to go to work for you, I still don't want people to go to work for me if they're not going to fit my culture because you will never stop fighting against that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so Like with this tool, you have the ability, once people have taken the assessment, to run team reports. So you could build as many teams as you want. It just costs to take the assessment, which is part of what I think is so nice. But I did it as a podcast crew assessment. And then I forwarded the team report to you guys, and there are 12 factors that it extracts from the overall personality of the four of us. And it's control, social influence, patience, precision, ambition, positive expectancy, composure, being analytical, being results oriented, being expressive, being a team player, and quality orientation. And I was kind of cracking up at which ones each of us are, in the middle, high, or low on. And I am really high on three specific categories. And it made me realize why I have done much better as an entrepreneur than I really did as an employee. Because I pushed back on my bosses all the time. And I know from talking to them after I quit working for them how much that frustrated them. I am all the way high on control. I do not like to give up control. I like to be the one in control. I'm moderately high on social influence, which correlates with that to say, as long as you're listening to me and go with my idea, we're perfect. I am high on ambition, which means no matter what the goal was, a little bit more would have been better. Here's the cool thing about all of us. All of you are moderately high on ambition. So that means we're all on the same page, like this should be better. We should push harder. More people need to download the podcast. Um, Mike is moderate on positive expectancy. So you kind of expect some good, some bad in anything that you're doing. And the rest of us are moderately high on positive expectancy. On composure, me and Maleah are moderately low. So when we get frustrated, we actually get really frustrated with things, and you're going to see it in our faces when we're frustrated. On being analytical, me and Maleah and Meghan are moderate. And on being analytical, Mike is a little higher. He is moderately high on the analytical. What was the phrase that I told you when we were working together back in 2000?
I think that is unnecessary to inject at this point, but
It went along with that. What's
you told me to stop the God infernal tinkering, and that for an analytical person is I've got it's to Megan, to your point about being a perfectionist. I gotta refine it a little more. I gotta polish it a little bit more. I gotta refine the polishing. Like, yeah, there's a lot of tinkering that goes on with that.
Yeah.
I like how Steve Jobs says, "Real artists ship it." So you
Yes.
got to be done at some point.
Which is the next one, results orientation, which is probably why I told you that, because I am all the way at the top on that one. You're actually next to the top. You're
I
moderately
know.
high on that one. And then Megan and Maleah are moderate on that. And then the expressiveness one I thought was kind of funny because the thing that you have told me that has been a struggle for you in relationships is like, but they just want me to sit around and talk about my feelings and what's going on. You're really low on expressiveness, Mike. If you
Yeah.
look at Megan,
Yeah.
Megan is moderately low on expressiveness. I'm moderate, and Maleah is all the way at the top. So she thinks,
Is this where we get to inject parental experience,
sure,
or is this
sure. I think that would be great.
no.
And then we're all
I will
moderate
say
on
it
quality.
was definitely something else growing up in a household where he's on the low end and I'm on the high end, and my mother, I know, is all the way up there with me. So it was
Yeah.
interesting. I'll say that.
We had a neighbor one time that just said, "Malia, you're just so beyond."
That was all she could say. I'm just beyond.
Beyond whatever it is, you're just beyond. So what's cool about
Yeah.
this, and I did this with 60 something firefighters. I had everybody take it, and then I built out this report on these 12 factors where everybody was. So once you understand where everybody is, then you can go, oh, well, I got to play to people's strengths. So if we're playing to people's strengths, but we're
Mhm.
all ambitious, so we're all going to push really hard. But if something requires patience, which one of us, it's me, should you not put in charge of things where you need to be really patient? So if you're weak in an area, don't put that person in charge of that area. And you design the team and design the workplace around what people are gifted at, not what they struggle with.
To your point, that was one of the things that we found. That, like I said, that company that I was working with, we found that one of their salespeople was high on. We used the DISC, we didn't use the PPI, but it's a very similar
Based on the same
assessment.
thing.
But we found that one of their sales persons was on either really high on C or really high on S, which did not create the drive and the attachment. They could communicate all kinds of details and features and benefits, but there was no the emotional side, the energy side around sales wasn't there, and they were one of the ones that self-selected out of the organization. But again, you begin to understand where to put people, or you understand kind of what drives. And this is, we won't talk, we haven't talked about this assessment, but I know Profiles has other ones where you can establish benchmarks. If you know the sales position or your engineering position or your administrative, right, you can begin to identify benchmarks that, again, it's not a hard and fast, but you need to be paying attention to anybody who is outside of those benchmark ranges, because it's going to create either a lot of additional work for you to bring them back in, or it's going to create a lot of friction within your systems, within your culture, within your organization, if they stay in there and they're not rightly fit for the position, for the role.
Yeah, the PXT Select is the one you're talking about there, and it is phenomenal. It goes super in depth
Mhm.
with the hiring models and giving you the ability to create that job performance model that you're looking for, and then match against it for hiring, for coaching, for all that. We probably ought to do an episode on that at some point. But
Yeah.
I want to jump back to the individual reports for a second. So I kind of talked about the team report, which I think is very helpful because I don't want to work on a team where I don't fit. And I think we balance each other fairly well. We do have a few weaknesses as a team of four, but when you have a small team, you almost always have some holes. If you have a team of 12, you probably got somebody in there that's going to fill the gaps for each of the areas that you need some strength in. For an individual, when you look at a management report, so this would be the boss getting this report on the employee, it looks at the way that they handle productivity, quality of work, initiative, teamwork, problem solving, and adapting to change. And then my favorite one is how do they respond to job related stress, frustrations, and conflict? Because we are good when times are good, but when things are going sideways, that's when the other side of you comes out. And Mike and I've kind of joked that we have alternate personalities. Now we developed them on purpose. I've got Frank. That's the other me. And
Yeah.
Frank comes out when he needs to make things happen, and he just does not care what anybody thinks.
Yeah.
I like Frank. I mean, Frank ain't scared of nothing. So you look at that adaptation. That's the stretching of the rubber band when you go, I've got to do this. And then I've got this other personality where I'm like, I've got to be nice, Jody. I can't be in charge of stuff. I have to step back. I have to get out of the way, which is so hard for me to do. But there are times that I bring out that other Jody that's much more subtle. Then once you understand that, then you want to know, next section of the report is what drives or motivates the person and how intensely do they approach their personality. So you're looking at overall behavioral makeup, then you're looking at how they handle stress and conflict, then you're looking at what drives and motivates them, and then you're looking how intense they approach things. So if you guys want to go to your report and just go to the section on what motivates you. So for me, it says new challenges and areas of interest that are a real test of abilities. I keep thinking, oh, I just want to coast and take it easy. And then about a minute and a half later, I'm like, we should create a new thing that nobody's ever done before. And I put myself in these situations over and over again. And when I looked at this, I'm like, when I think I want a thing, but then I see what my natural tendency is, it's like I want to be first. I want to have pressure. I want to make sure that there are deadlines. I want to be in charge and have a chance to chart a course that nobody else has done before. And all of that's listed in bullet points there for me. So let's go to Meghan. What are some of the things on what motivates Meghan?
Okay, really quick though, I wanted to add something to what you just said about your own report. I think that goes back to the team balance because you're very innovative and you come up with all of these ideas and you just want to go after them. And I am very detail oriented. And so working with you, I'm the person who then asks the questions. Well, what do we need for this? How will we accomplish this? And I'm organizing that information before I'm taking action because I want to make sure that I have that so that we're not, taking undue risk. So I don't like risk. I like systems and procedures. You like just
Jump
going
off.
ahead and doing.
Let's jump off the cliff. We'll figure out how to build an airplane on the way down.
Yeah, so I think that's really helpful being on the same team that we can kind of balance each other out because I am pretty reluctant to change and I don't want to disrupt my systems. However, there are a lot of good things that can come from that. And so that's kind of where you come in and you show me, well, if we innovate in this way, then we can accomplish this and get
And,
this
and let me
result.
push on the other side of that. Having you and having Debbie on my team and some of the other people I've worked with over the years, the pushback helps ensure that I don't jump off a cliff that doesn't need to be jumped off of. And I jumped off a lot of the wrong cliffs when I first went into business. And that's a very expensive proposition. That's why, again, go back to what you said, Megan, that team balance is so critical. I don't take a risk that has not been vetted because I trust the people on my team. And I have learned to say, I like this idea, but it's not something we should do right now. I just wanted to put it out there so I could get it out of my head. All right. So back to what motivates you.
So, looking at my motivational intensity, I'm really driven by the impact of things, which is why I go through and I analyze all of the aspects of a decision before implementing them. So, I can be a really creative problem solver, but I need a little bit more time for that. So that's where the intensity is a little bit lower on my scale is I want to have the time to really sort through things before taking action. And I'm really motivated by working as a team. So I like to collaborate with others. And that's where I go and I ask questions and I involve people who maybe aren't as vocal. So I'm not personally as expressive, but I'm kind of the person who tries to get other people to be expressive, which I think is really interesting. So I try to motivate other people and get them involved in the conversation so that we can implement an effective solution as a team.
All right. So Maleah, looking at pages 9 and 10, what motivates Maleah and then how intensely. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yes, I was about to talk about it, and then the document just went away. Hold on one sec. How about we go to Mike
Let's go to
first?
Mike. Mike, pages 9 and 10.
It's interesting talking about jumping off the cliff, Jody. I don't know if you remember. So, for the audience, Jody and I used to work together many, 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 many moons ago, and I ended up kind of taking the right hand man seat, so to speak, the kind of the COO role. There was a period of time where Jody was not allowed to come to any staff meetings because his intensity just scared the bejesus out of everybody else on the staff. So we had a cooling off period where we were able to talk and where Jody and I were able to have one-on-one
We would
conversations,
meet.
and then and then I would relay that to the rest of the staff. But
You're the
again,
filter.
it's understanding. For me, what the motivation side for me is part of it is that cerebral effect. I love the analytics. I love being able to think through things, and my brain moves fast enough that I have typically solved something within 10 seconds and I'm ready to move on and make a decision. The downside of that, though, is that I either make the assumption that everybody else arrived at the same conclusion
Yeah.
in the same time frame, or if you're still buffering on trying to figure out what the solution is, I have solved it for all of us. Let's move on. So,
Well, and that
which doesn't always garner a whole lot of respect and trust for people following you.
not all the love comes in there, but
No, not all
you
the
know,
love.
and that's really measured on the thinking style on the PXT Select on that other
Right,
assessment.
right.
When you're pretty high on that, sometimes you have to remember, I gotta slow down, not because I'm better than anybody else, but I'm jumping 5 steps ahead
Yeah.
instead of instead of keeping up with everybody else. So,
Well, and this typically happens for what I'll call big picture thinkers, right? If you can look at something and capture the gist, if you think in terms of gist of things,
yeah,
you're on that higher end that where you're able to see the picture and see the whole thing, and you don't have to see all the details of what's hiding out in the corners. You get the whole picture, but it's the people who see the details that prevent you from getting eaten by a lion that was hiding out in the corners.
exactly. So, Leah, you got yours up
That
now?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, kind of a whole thread that I found through the whole test that I thought was really interesting was I'm very much like, yes, I'm incredibly driven and ambitious myself, that I am results oriented, which is crazy that I got some of the responses and test scores that I did. But it's not even about me. It's like I care about my whole team coming on this journey with me.
Mhm.
So I kept seeing a bunch of things of like, oh, I'm the encourager. So I'm going to motivate different people on my team of like, no, it's okay that you don't understand it right now. Let's dissect what you're not understanding so that you can come along and see the view from all of us where we're standing. So I thought that was really interesting that I'm more motivated by helping the people around me than I am just getting myself to the destination, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
I can attest to that too.
That's awesome. And I wanted to say one more thing. I was only looking at that first page when you asked me about what motivates me. So I
Mm.
looked at the second page just now and I saw a couple of more things that I thought were interesting. That one of the things that motivates me is I really want the opportunity to learn new skills. And I think that has become a huge part of my identity is being a lifelong learner. And I know that
Oh,
Malia has said that multiple times. Mike has said that you always have to be learning new things. And then on the other side of that, I really crave the recognition for the work that I do, and I want the ability to work independently. That's a really nice way of saying something else that I read in the report about myself that was maybe a little bit jarring, but probably pretty accurate, which is that when I want something done right, I'm more likely to do it myself rather than hand it off to someone else because I want to make sure that it gets done properly. So that's where I'm gonna, really attach to that personal autonomy and I'm gonna put in the work and be critical and analytical of it.
that makes a lot of sense. So I,
Welcome to the club of I can't let that go.
yeah, well, I need to control it. You can't let go of it.
Yeah,
It has to be perfect. We're all
yeah.
working our best. But I think what's interesting about this, I took a disc assessment in, I think it was 1992 was the first time that I took one. And so that's a long time ago. And I am still pretty close to the same person.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
adapt. And that's what I always try to tell people. You can adapt. It's just that most people don't because we're comfortable in our own skin. And I've always believed that the identity that you adopt, like whatever self-image that you create in your psyche, you will protect that more than anything else.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I think that we would give up our jobs, we give up our careers, we would give up so many things because we're avoiding that very intense cognitive dissonance, that disconnect between who we believe we are and what we're doing. If I was given the job of, being a social worker, which I think is a very important job, that takes so much patience and so much sincerity and understanding. I might make it to orientation, but I wouldn't finish orientation. Like that 2 hours would be intense for me. And then I'd be like, nah, I'm not going to do this. But I think as a leadership strategist, I'm in the perfect role. And I believe that we are drawn to do the kind of work that fits our internal identity. We are also significantly happier when we work in an environment that plays to our strengths and appreciates who we are. And if you get to work in a place where you get to be you, you don't ever feel like you're working. Like this is the most fun that I've ever had being an entrepreneur, except for yesterday and the day
Right.
before and the day before. And like when I went into business, I still miss, and Mike, you can attest to this, I miss road trips to Austin
Yeah.
walking in and trying to sell to people who had no idea we were coming. That's my personality. And so
Yeah.
all of that stuff that, you have some people that go, that would be like death to me. I could not do that. That's my favorite thing. But then things that are like, oh, that's heaven to me, that other people would say, I'd be like, that's death to me.
Right.
Like, we're happy when we're being us and being the best version of us. And that's the point of any assessment is I want to take a great person and match them with a great culture and a great team. And when I get to do that, everybody wins. And that's the big picture of it. So all of the tools that we use and that we represent and that we sell are based on that. So just quick pitch here, and we're at our time, but quick pitch here is that if you are interested in understanding who you are, reach out to us.
Yeah.
These assessments are $100. It's not expensive, and you get to find out a lot of good information about who you are, what you're like, and how you work. If you want to evaluate your team and then do some training on it, man, have we got some cool stuff from you. Mike and I've been doing these trainings, like we said, for 26 years now. Since
Yeah.
1999, we've been doing this
Yeah.
this assessment and a few others, and they keep advancing them. But we've been doing this for 26 years and have really dug into how you help people understand the greatness within and unleash it. So we can joke around about, oh, I'm a control freak, but I am. And when I get to be in an environment where I get to control the environment and control the outcome, like
Yep.
sales, consulting, strategic thinking, that's me, man. That is my specialty right there. So, any parting thoughts? Let's start with Megan. You have any parting thoughts you want to tell people?
I think just reiterating on the scales for this, it's not good to bad, it's just how you present things. And sometimes we're a little bit hesitant to believe what it is on paper, but when you really read into it, I think these tests are so accurate and what they can gauge from you. And so it's really helpful just on an individual level, but also on a team level, if that's something that you're ever interested in. I have learned so much about you and Debbie and just how we interact with one another and how we balance each other out. And I think that's really helpful for playing to each other's strengths.
Maleah, parting thoughts?
Just that, I mean, every single personality test that I've ever gotten, I learned something new about myself, and it's a new learning opportunity of little tweaks and everything that I can make along the way so that I can better interact with the world around me.
Excellent. Mike,
Bosses, don't be afraid to give assessments. Employees, don't be afraid to take assessments because you cannot improve. Hope is not a strategy. You cannot improve what you don't know is going on, and trying to do something blind is just, it's not a good strategy. So, can't support taking these assessments or using these assessments anymore.
that's awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us for this episode of Become the Leader podcast. We're gonna have great episodes coming up for you as well. Just wanted to throw out there the Jody Holland Inc. app is now available on Google Play and on iTunes or the App Store. So download that. It gives you free access to a leadership community, and it gives you a bunch of short leadership videos that you can use with your team, and also just keeps you connected with us. Share this podcast. Tell everybody about this podcast. We would love more listeners. And if you have any ideas or things you want to learn about, just let us know. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. I'm Jody Holland,
Maleah Grigsby.
Mike Grigsby.
And I'm Meghan Slaughter.
and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining Become the Leader. Keep growing forward and become the leader you would follow.